Hello friends, I'm Finny, a friendly fish living in a beautiful coral reef in Key West, Florida. Now you might be wondering what's so special about my home. Well, imagine a bustling city under the sea, bursting with life and color. That's my coral reef. It's a place where thousands of marine creatures, from tiny seahorses to gigantic whales, come together in a symphony of life. We have towering coral skyscrapers painted in hues of pink, blue, and yellow, and streets bustling with schools of fish darting this way and that. And just like a city, my coral reef is a vital hub, not just for us marine folk, but for the entire planet. It's a beautiful, vibrant world beneath the waves, full of wonder and magic. Isn't it just marvelous? But my home is facing a big challenge, something called ocean acidification. Ocean acidification. Sounds complicated, right? But really, it's all about balance. Just like when you're running a lemonade stand, you need the right amount of lemons to make the perfect glass of lemonade. Not too sweet, not too sour. Now, imagine the ocean as a giant glass of lemonade. So, what happens when our giant glass of ocean lemonade gets too sour? Well, it starts with something called carbon dioxide, or CO2, which you might know as the stuff we breathe out. When we burn things like coal, oil, and gas for energy, we create even more CO2, and a whole lot of it ends up in the atmosphere. But here's the twist. The ocean is like a big sponge soaking up about a third of that CO2 from the atmosphere. Now that might sound like a good thing, right? Less CO2 in the air should be a good thing. But remember our lemonade analogy. When the ocean soaks up all that CO2, it's like adding too many lemons to our lemonade. It gets too sour, or in other words, more acidic. Now the ocean's pH, or potential of hydrogen, is a way to measure how acidic or basic a solution is. Just like in your lemonade, you wouldn't want it too sweet or too sour, the ocean needs a balanced pH to be healthy. But with all this extra CO2, our ocean's pH is dropping, which means it's becoming more acidic. This is what we call ocean acidification. It's like a giant science experiment, but one we can't just end if it goes wrong. And it's not just a problem for the fish and the plants that live in the ocean. It affects everything, from the smallest plankton to the biggest whale, and even the coral reefs that many ocean creatures like me call home. So when the ocean gets too sour, like a lemonade with too many lemons, it becomes a problem for me and my friends in the coral reef. Now you might wonder, why does it matter if the ocean becomes a bit more like lemonade? Well, let's dive a little deeper. Imagine trying to build a sandcastle, but the sand keeps dissolving in your hands. That's what's happening to our coral reefs. You see, corals are like the architects of the ocean. They build their homes, called reefs, by pulling minerals from the water. But when the ocean turns sour or more acidic, it becomes harder for corals to find these minerals. It's like trying to build that sandcastle with disappearing sand. The result? Our coral reefs become weaker and more fragile. But it's not just about the corals. Coral reefs are bustling cities under the sea, home to a quarter of all marine species. Clownfish, sea turtles, and even sharks rely on these reefs for food, shelter, and nursery grounds. If our coral cities crumble, it's not just the corals that lose their home. All these creatures, from the smallest shrimp to the biggest shark, they lose their home too. The ripple effect of this can be felt all the way up the food chain, impacting other animals, and eventually us humans too. It's a bit like dominoes. If one falls, they all could. And without our coral home, where would we go? That's why it's so important to keep our ocean just right, not too sour. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, how does this apply to the corals in Key West, Florida? Well, Florida's coral reef is experiencing a multi-year outbreak of stony coral tissue loss disease, also known as SCTLD. At least 17 countries and territories in the wider Caribbean have been impacted and have continued to spread consistently since 2014, with the Florida Reef as its main target. What makes this reef so special is that this is the only coral reef system to have extensive shallow coral formation near its coast. It is a home to over 40 species of reef-building corals. So it's a pretty big deal. So even telling your buddies about the struggles of coral reefs can make a big impact. So remember, every bit counts. You may be thinking to yourself, wow, this is all doom and gloom, but it's not. People are starting to open their eyes to the crisis coral reefs are facing, So there's hope on the horizon. With some serious conservation efforts and some love and care, we can give not only Florida's corals, but all coral reefs a fighting chance to keep them thriving and alive.